The Black Dahlia. On January 15th, 1947, in Los Angeles, California, a mother and her young daughter were taking a morning walk through a vacant lot on South Norton Avenue when they came across what the mother initially thought was a discarded mannequin. But as they approached, the mother quickly realized that it was not a mannequin at all. It was the body of a young woman, cut completely in half at the waist. The victim's body had been drained entirely of blood, leaving her skin a ghostly white color. Her corpse was carefully posed with her arms raised above her head and her legs spread apart. The killer had carved a smile into her face from ear to ear, and her body showed signs of severe torture before her end. The woman was quickly identified as 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, an aspiring actress who had moved to California to pursue her dreams in Hollywood. She was last seen alive 6 days earlier on January 9th, leaving the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. The press immediately dubbed her the Black Dahlia, a nickname inspired by a film noir movie called The Blue Dahlia that had been released the year before, combined with the fact that Short often wore black clothing. The investigation into her case would become one of the largest in Los Angeles history. Over 150 officers were assigned to the case. They conducted over 250 interviews and followed up on over 75 potential suspects. But here's where things get even more disturbing. Just days after the body was discovered, a package arrived at a local newspaper. Inside were Elizabeth Short's belongings, her birth certificate, photographs, an address book, and her social security card. The items had been carefully cleaned with gasoline to remove any fingerprints. The killer had also sent several letters to the police and newspapers, taunting them about the case. One letter read, "Here is Dahlia's belongings, letter to follow." But the promised letter providing details about the case never arrived. Over the following months and years, more than 500 people came forward to confess to the case, but every single confession was proven false. Many suspects were investigated, including a man who had sent Short's belongings to the newspaper, but there was never enough evidence to charge anyone. You see, the most disturbing aspect of the case wasn't just the brutality of the act itself. It was the calculated nature of everything that followed. The body had been washed clean. Not a single fingerprint was found at the scene. The precise bisection of her body suggested someone with medical knowledge or surgical experience. Detectives investigated doctors, medical students, and morticians. They looked into everyone who had contact with Short in her final days. But despite the massive investigation, despite the physical evidence, and despite the killer's taunts, no arrests were ever made. To this day, over 75 years later, the Black Dahlia case remains one of the most famous unsolved cases in American history. The killer's identity died with them, taking the answers to one of Los Angeles's darkest mysteries to the grave. The Somerton Man. On December 1st, 1948, in Adelaide, Australia, beachgoers at Somerton Beach noticed a well-dressed man slumped against a seawall around 6:30 in the morning, believing he was simply drunk or asleep. But by 7 o'clock that evening, when the man still hadn't moved, someone finally approached him. He was dead. The man appeared to be in his 40s, roughly 5 feet 11 inches tall, with hazel eyes and graying hair. He wore a white shirt, a red and blue tie, brown trousers, and a brown coat. His shoes were polished, and his clothing was immaculate. But when police searched his pockets, they found no wallet, no identification, no money. What they did find was a used train ticket from Adelaide, a pack of chewing gum, an unused second-class rail ticket, a pack of Army Club cigarettes containing 7 Kensington cigarettes, and a box of matches. The autopsy revealed something even stranger. The man's spleen was enlarged to 3 times its normal size. There was blood in his stomach. His pupils were unusually small. All signs pointed to poisoning, but toxicology tests couldn't identify any known poison in his system. Then investigators discovered something peculiar. Every single label on his clothing had been carefully removed, not torn off in haste, but cut away with precision. 4 months later, police made another discovery. Deep inside a hidden fob pocket in the man's trousers, they found a tiny rolled-up scrap of paper. The paper contained 2 words printed in an ornate script, Tamam Shud. The phrase is Persian, meaning, "it is finished," or "it is ended." Police traced the paper to an extremely rare collection of poems called The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. The scrap had been torn from the final page of the book. Now here's where things get even more mysterious. A man came forward claiming he had found a copy of the Rubaiyat in his car around the time of the death. The book was missing its final page, the exact page the scrap had been torn from. But inside the back cover of this book, police discovered 5 lines of seemingly random letters, appearing to be some kind of code. The code has never been deciphered, despite decades of attempts by professional code breakers, intelligence agencies, and amateur sleuths around the world. Police also found a phone number penciled in the book. The number belonged to a nurse who lived near Somerton Beach. When questioned, she claimed not to know the man, though witnesses reported she looked shocked when shown his photograph. You see, the Somerton Man case isn't just an unsolved death. It's a puzzle wrapped inside an enigma. Was he a spy during the early Cold War? Was the code a one-time pad used for espionage? Why were all his labels removed? In 2016, Authorities exhumed his body for DNA testing and isotope analysis. The results suggested he may have been of European origin, but his identity remained unknown. For over 70 years, the Somerton Man has kept his secrets. No one knows who he was, where he came from, or why he ended up lifeless on that Australian beach with a coded message and a stolen identity. The Zodiac Killer. On December 20th, 1968, in Benicia, California, two teenagers parked on a quiet road near Lake Herman were shot and killed by an unknown assailant who would soon terrorize all of Northern California. 17-year-old David Faraday and 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen were found just after 11 o'clock that night. Both had been shot multiple times with a .22 caliber weapon. 7 months later, on July 4th, 1969, the killer struck again. Darlene Farron and Michael Mageau were sitting in a parked car in Vallejo when a man approached their vehicle and opened fire. Farron was pronounced gone at the hospital. Mageau survived, but could only provide a limited description of the attacker. Then, just 40 minutes after the shooting, police received a call from a man claiming responsibility. He spoke in a calm, monotone voice and provided details about the attacks that only the killer would know. On August 1st, 1969, 3 newspapers in the San Francisco Bay Area each received an identical letter. The letters contained 1/3 of a 408-character cipher and claimed that the code revealed the killer's identity. The writer demanded the cipher be published on each paper's front page, or he would go on a killing spree. The letters were signed with a circle containing a cross, a symbol that would become the killer's signature. He called himself the Zodiac. A schoolteacher and his wife managed to crack the 408-character cipher within a week. The decoded message rambled about killing being the most thrilling experience, but contained no name or useful information. On September 27th, 1969, the Zodiac attacked again at Lake Berryessa. This time, he wore an executioner-style hood with his circle cross symbol stitched onto the front. He tied up Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard before stabbing them repeatedly. Hartnell survived. Shepard did not. 2 weeks later, on October 11th, the Zodiac shot and ended cab driver Paul Stein in San Francisco. This attack finally provided police with physical evidence, fingerprints, and a piece of Stein's blood-soaked shirt which the killer mailed to newspapers as proof. But here's where things get even more chilling. On November 8th, 1969, the Zodiac sent another letter containing a new cipher, the 340-character Z340. This code would remain unsolved for 51 years. The letters kept coming. At least 18 confirmed letters were sent between 1969 and 1974. The Zodiac taunted police, threatened civilians, and claimed to have ended 37 people, though only 5 cases were ever confirmed. Police investigated thousands of suspects. Arthur Leigh Allen became the prime suspect, matching witness descriptions and having circumstantial connections to the crimes. But there was never enough evidence to charge him. He passed away in 1992. In December 2020, a team of amateur codebreakers finally cracked the Z340 cipher. The message revealed more rambling thoughts about the afterlife, but once again, no identity. You see, despite decades of investigation, despite the physical evidence, despite the letters and ciphers and eyewitness accounts, the Zodiac Killer's identity remains one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries. The case is still open. The killer, whether living or gone, has never been caught. The Cleveland Torso Murderer. On September 23, 1935, in Cleveland, Ohio, 2 young boys were playing along the shores of Kingsbury Run when they stumbled upon 2 partial male bodies lying at the base of a hill. Both bodies had been beheaded, both had been drained of blood, and both had been dismembered with what appeared to be surgical precision. This gruesome discovery marked the beginning of one of the most chilling unsolved serial cases in American history. Over the next 3 years, more bodies would appear throughout Cleveland's east side. The killer would come to be known as the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run. By 1938, at least 12 victims had been discovered, though some investigators believe the true number could be as high as 20. Most of the bodies were found near Kingsbury Run, a ravine that served as a haven for homeless transients during the Great Depression. The killer's method never varied. Every single victim was beheaded. Most were dismembered at the waist or at major joints. Many showed signs of being drained of blood before being dumped. The precision of the cuts suggested someone with anatomical knowledge, possibly a doctor, butcher, or someone with medical training. But here's what made this case even more disturbing. Only 3 of the victims were ever identified: Edward Andrassy, Florence Polillo, and Rose Wallace. The rest remain nameless to this day, their identities lost because most were drifters with no records. In 1936, the killer became even more brazen. 2 torsos were discovered in full view of the office window of Elliot Ness, Cleveland's director of public safety, and the famous lawman who had taken down Al Capone. Ness threw every resource at the case. He launched massive investigations. He conducted raids on the shantytown encampments where many victims had lived. He even ordered the entire hobo settlement in Kingsbury Run to be burned to the ground in August 1938. Police arrested a man named Frank Dolezal in 1939. He confessed to one of the cases, but he later recanted his confession and was found gone in his jail cell under suspicious circumstances before he could stand trial. Now, Ness had his own theory. He suspected a man named Dr. Francis Sweeney, a surgeon with medical knowledge who had connections to the Kingsbury Run area. Ness personally interrogated Sweeney and even administered lie detector tests. Sweeney passed the test while sober, but when administered the test while intoxicated, he failed. Shortly after the interrogations, Sweeney voluntarily committed himself to a mental institution, where he remained for decades. The killing stopped after 1938. Some believe the killer moved to another city. Others think the perpetrator chose to self-unalive. Many investigators believe Sweeney was the culprit, but there was never enough evidence to charge him. You see, despite Elliot Ness's fame and resources, despite the physical evidence and the clear pattern, the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run was never officially identified or brought to justice. The case remains open. 12 confirmed victims, possibly more, and not a single conviction. One of America's most prolific serial cases, forever unsolved. The Isdal Woman. On November 29, 1970, in the remote Isdalen Valley near Bergen, Norway, a group of hikers noticed a plume of smoke rising from behind several large rocks approximately 100 meters from the hiking trail. When they approached, they discovered the charred remains of a woman's body. Scattered around her were dozens of sleeping pill bottles and a partially melted bottle of liqueur. The fire had burned at an estimated temperature of 1,000 degrees Celsius, leaving her face completely unrecognizable. Police initially suspected self-unaliving, but the autopsy revealed something far more sinister. The woman had carbon monoxide in her blood, meaning she was still alive when the fire started. More disturbingly, she had severe bruising on her neck, suggesting possible strangulation or a violent struggle before her end. Investigators examined her belongings. Every single label on her clothing had been carefully cut away. Her jewelry was partially melted, and most chilling of all, her fingerprints had been deliberately sanded off, making identification nearly impossible. But police weren't ready to give up. They traced her movements backward through Bergen. What they discovered was extraordinary. The woman had checked into multiple hotels in the weeks before her passing, each time using a different fake name. At Bergen train station, authorities found 2 suitcases that belonged to her. Inside were wigs, multiple sets of clothing, prescription bottles with all identifying information scratched off, and foreign currency from several different countries. Then investigators found something even stranger. Coded notes written in a substitution cipher that has never been deciphered. The notes appear to document her travels across Europe, but the cipher system remains a complete mystery to this day. Now here's where things get truly bizarre. Police discovered the woman had used at least 8 different fake passports, all with different names and nationalities. Witnesses reported seeing her meeting with unknown men at various locations. Handwriting analysis revealed she deliberately disguised her writing style in hotel registries. The woman spoke multiple languages fluently. She had traveled extensively through Europe in the weeks before her passing, visiting Norway, Germany, France, and Belgium. All evidence pointed to one conclusion. This was someone trained in espionage. You see, 1970 was the height of the Cold War. Intelligence agencies from both sides operated throughout Europe. Many believe the Isdal Woman was a spy, possibly caught in a deadly game between rival agencies. In 2016, Norwegian authorities launched Operation Isotope and exhumed her body for DNA testing and isotope analysis. The results suggested she was likely from the border region between Germany and France, but her true identity remained unknown. Experts analyzed her dental work, which showed signs of extensive and expensive dental care, suggesting she came from a wealthy background or had access to significant resources. For over 50 years, the Isdal Woman has remained one of Europe's most perplexing mysteries. Was she game-overed by enemy agents? Did she choose to self-unalive to avoid capture? Was she a double agent who knew too much? The cause of her passing remains officially undetermined. Her identity is still unknown, and the answers to who she was and why she ended up burned beyond recognition in that remote Norwegian valley died with her.